Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today we'll be exploring a pretty unique book called With Folded Wings.
Interesting title.
Yeah, and it was actually published posthumously. It's a
Mhm.
collection of communications between the authors Stuart Edward White
Oh,
and
wow.
and beings he called Invisibles, who offered guidance on self-development and like all sorts of things.
Interesting. So we're going beyond the veil a bit.
Well, and that's what I think makes it so fascinating, right? Because you can get caught up in that sort of otherworldly aspect of it.
Hmm?
But what we're going to do today is really try to ground these insights in everyday life and see what practical techniques and wisdom we can extract that you can actually apply.
Okay. I like that.
All right, so let's jump right in. We'll start with chapter 2, education. The Invisibles kind of throw a curveball right off the bat.
Yeah.
They argue that traditional education often misses the mark
Mm.
by like trying to force feed adult concepts onto children
Mm.
instead of fostering that like natural curiosity. Have you ever felt that? Like just information's being crammed in and it's not really connecting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, I think it's because our natural state is to be curious, right? Like if you think about children, they're constantly exploring and questioning and making connections.
Always asking why.
Exactly. And I think the Invisibles are suggesting that effective educators, they tap into that natural drive. They enter the child's world and offer knowledge in digestible bits.
That makes sense.
Yeah, allow for organic growth,
Mm.
not force feeding.
Like those aha moments, right? When something clicks because you're genuinely interested, not just memorizing facts.
Precisely. They actually use this powerful analogy in the book. It's about a child feeling overwhelmed by the adult world, like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
And it's funny because I think even as adults, we can still feel that way sometimes.
Absolutely.
Like when we're trying to learn something new or we're in a new environment and it's just like, whoa, too much information.
Hmm.
So how do we apply this to our own lives, even if we're not, teachers or working with children?
I think it's about recognizing that learning is a lifelong process. And it's most effective when it's driven by genuine curiosity. Like, what are you passionate about? What topics make you want to dive deeper? That's where the real learning
So
happens.
find your passion, find your curiosity and follow it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on to chapter 3, functioning. Now, this is where the Invisibles really get down to business. They're all about action,
Okay.
any action. They say action is the engine of evolution. Don't get stuck in overthinking. Just do something.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because sometimes, I know for me, analysis paralysis can really be an obstacle.
It's so true, but I think they're saying even a full job, right, done with intention contributes to growth. It's about the commitment to doing something, gaining experience, and moving forward.
So it's not about finding that perfect action. It's about getting out there and learning by doing.
Yeah, just start.
What's something you've been putting off? Maybe because you're overthinking it. Could you apply this principle and just take a small step today?
Yeah, I think we all have those things lurking in the back of our minds.
Absolutely. And even if we stumble, remember every step is a learning experience. All right, let's move on to chapter 4, the positive ingredient. Now, this chapter introduces this idea of a powerful energy source beyond the material world, and it's what fuels our growth, our creativity, everything.
This is where it starts to get really interesting, I think.
Right. It's a little out there, but stick with me.
Okay.
They actually use the analogy of building a water wheel, and the act of creation often sparks that desire to find something to power it. I love that
That's
analogy.
very visual.
Yeah, it's like we have these water wheels within us. Our passions, our creative projects just waiting for that extra energy to get them moving.
And here's the key. We can't receive this positive ingredient passively. It takes effort. It takes a conscious choice to connect with it.
So it's not something that just happens to us. We have to actively seek that connection, put in the work to align ourselves with this powerful force.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now on to chapter 9, meditation.
Oh, this is a good one.
Right. And this chapter takes a bit of a different approach to meditation than what we might traditionally think of.
Yeah, I was surprised.
It's not about emptying the mind. It's about actively inducing a flow-through of this vital energy,
Yeah.
building our capacity to receive and channel the positive ingredient, if you will.
Building up a muscle.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a good way to put it.
Now, they describe 4 very vivid meditation exercises. The trapdoor, drawing abundance, building your ideal channel, and uniting with the great doing.
Some pretty powerful imagery there.
Yeah, and they're actually quite simple,
Mm.
but they're very powerful.
Ah.
I think even just taking a few minutes to practice any of these could be really beneficial. It's about strengthening that connection to that energy source.
Kind of rewiring ourselves in a way.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so on to chapter X, prayer. The Invisibles offer a very unique perspective on prayer.
It's definitely not what you typically hear.
No, and it's not about, begging for things or asking for favors. It's about something much deeper. They suggest that prayer done deeply isn't about asking for things at all. It's about confronting our naked soul
Wow.
and inspiring us toward wholeness.
That's pretty intense.
It is. It's a projection of our spiritual being.
Yeah.
It's about looking inward, facing our strengths and our weaknesses, and striving for greater harmony within ourselves.
It's about self-awareness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they emphasize that prayer isn't passive. It requires effort and a willingness to face ourselves, honestly. No sugarcoating.
I like that.
Yeah. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
We've explored the power of action, the positive ingredient in these powerful practices like meditation and prayer.
Some really practical techniques, I think.
Yes. And the next part, we'll delve even deeper into With Folded Wings and see what other gems of wisdom we can uncover. So stay tuned.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, so we've explored some pretty powerful concepts already, like action, that positive ingredient, meditation, and prayer.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
Definitely. So now let's jump into chapter Yeta, Harmony. And this one presents a very intriguing concept.
Okay.
So they suggest that harmony isn't this static state. It's not about achieving some perfect balance and then staying there.
Interesting.
It's a continuous dynamic flow.
Ah, I see.
It's
Yeah.
about embracing that ebb and flow of life. And they use this beautiful image of a flock of birds effortlessly changing formation.
I can see that.
Right.
Mm.
Each bird is playing its role, moving in sync, creating this fluid whole. So how do we bring more of that flowing harmony into our own lives,
Yeah.
our relationships, our work even?
Yeah, I think that's the million-dollar question, right? Because it feels like we get stuck in these patterns and these rigid ways of thinking and being.
Exactly.
And it's about finding that balance between effort and surrender. Holding on and letting go. It's kind of like a dancer,
Oh, that's a good analogy.
moving gracefully across the floor. It's a combination of strength and flexibility, control, and abandon.
So it's not about forcing things, but about moving with the rhythm of life. I like that. All right, let's move on to chapter 14, our part in creation. And this chapter dives into something pretty profound.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So the Invisibles suggest that we're not just passive recipients of this creative force, right? We're active participants in the process. We have the power to shape and mold reality.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's not about controlling it. It's about aligning ourselves with a greater purpose. And that's where it gets tricky. So how do we even begin to grasp that concept?
Well, they use this analogy of a channel,
Yeah.
right? Our role is to become clear and unobstructed conduits for this creative force. It's about allowing the positive ingredient to flow through us and express itself through our thoughts, our words, our actions.
So it's almost like letting go of the ego in a way, becoming instruments of something larger than ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay, on to chapter 8, the place of the intellect. Now this one seems a little counterintuitive at first, right? To talk about intellect in a book that's so focused on spiritual growth.
I see what you mean.
But they caution against over-reliance on the intellect, especially when it comes to spiritual matters. While a valuable tool, the intellect can sometimes actually hinder our growth.
So it's about finding that balance again.
Right. It's about stepping back from all that mental chatter, quieting the mind, experiencing the world through our senses, through intuition, through our heart.
It's about balancing that analytical thinking with the wisdom of the soul.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced that shift, like where you move from analyzing to simply being present and receptive?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like viewing life as this vast landscape instead of getting bogged down in all the little details.
Right, like letting go of that need to understand everything and just being in the moment.
Exactly.
It's about trusting that we're guided and supported, even when we don't have all the answers.
That's a tough one for a lot of people.
It is. Okay, let's talk about a topic that might feel a little heavy, chapter V's negatives. And this chapter tackles those inharmonious forces, those destructive forces that we encounter in life.
Yeah, the shadow side.
Right. But the Invisibles suggest that these negative forces aren't like separate entities. It's not like there's this evil force out there.
I see.
They're distortions in the flow of that positive ingredient, like shadows when the light gets blocked.
Ah, that's a good way to think about it.
And our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, they can either amplify or diminish these forces. So we have a responsibility to be mindful of what we're putting out into the world.
I agree with that.
Right. So fear, anger, resentment, those emotions create a kind of energetic resistance.
Yeah.
And they can block that positive ingredient, fuel the negativity.
It's like feeding a monster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we have a choice. We can choose to align ourselves with forces of harmony and love.
And that's empowering.
It is. So what are some practical ways that we can kind of counteract those negative forces?
Well, they really emphasize the power of gratitude, focusing on what we're grateful for. It creates a positive vibration that can dissolve negativity.
Yeah, makes sense.
Forgiveness is crucial too. Holding on to anger or resentment, it only harms us. It doesn't do anything to the other person. Forgiveness liberates us from that burden.
So it's about recognizing that we have a choice. We can feed the negativity or we can nourish the positive.
I like that.
All right, now let's move on to Chapter 8, Measure for Measure. This chapter introduces a universal law. They call it the law of complement, which is essentially cause and effect.
Okay.
But it extends beyond just the physical realm into the realm of energy and consciousness. Every thought, every feeling, every action. It creates a ripple effect that shapes our reality.
So we need to be mindful of what we're putting out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they encourage us to really ask ourselves, what am I contributing? Am I adding to the harmony or the disharmony? Am I amplifying love or fear?
Good questions.
Right. And the more we align with that positive ingredient, the more we cultivate love and gratitude, the more we attract those positive experiences and create a harmonious reality for ourselves and for the world around us.
So we're not just victims of circumstance?
Exactly. We're active creators of our own experience.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. It's empowering.
Mm-hmm.
This deep dive is already revealing so many practical techniques and insights from With Folded Wings.
It really is amazing how these seemingly abstract concepts can have such tangible effects on our lives.
Yeah, it really is. Amazing how these abstract concepts can have such a real impact on our lives. And speaking of tangible effects, let's talk about Chapter 16, Healing. This chapter offers a unique perspective on illness and well-being.
Okay, this should be good.
Right. So the Invisibles, they view illness not as like a punishment or some random event that happens to us, but as a potential catalyst for growth.
Interesting.
They propose that illness often stems from imbalances or blockages in the flow of that positive ingredient.
Ah,
So healing then becomes about restoring that flow, bringing our body, mind, and spirit back into alignment.
it's not about fighting the illness, but understanding its message.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Have you ever experienced a time when addressing the emotional or mental aspects of a situation actually led to physical healing? It's like acknowledging that interconnectedness of our being.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's about listening to your body's messages and seeking healing on all levels, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual.
It makes me think about the importance of self-care. And it's not just about pampering ourselves, right? It's about actively participating in our own well-being.
Absolutely. The Invisibles emphasize rest, relaxation, and self-care to replenish our energy and create a receptive environment for healing. And they also highlight the power of positive thinking and visualization.
Oh, yeah.
Like imagine holding a clear image of yourself, healthy and vibrant. That can actually shift your energy and accelerate healing.
It's like harnessing the power of the mind to support the body's natural healing abilities. Okay, so let's talk about a topic that might feel a little heavy. Chapter 61, The Gentle Art of Dying. It might seem like a strange topic to end on, but the Invisibles, they approach death with a sense of peace and even wonder.
That's a good point. It's not something we usually talk about with excitement.
Right. And they see it not as an ending, but as a transition, continuation of the journey. So instead of fear or dread, they encourage curiosity and a sense of adventure.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective. It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience.
Exactly. And they emphasize living fully in the present moment,
Yeah.
appreciating this life, while recognizing it's just one chapter in a much larger story. And the qualities we cultivate here, love, wisdom, compassion, they will accompany us beyond this physical realm.
It's comforting in a way.
It is. It's not about clinging to this life or fearing what's next, but focusing on living each day to its fullest and trusting in the process.
Trusting the journey.
Exactly. And speaking of profound thoughts, remember that closing passage of the image of the ocean waves?
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
They remind us that life is this constant ebb and flow, right? This rhythm applies to both the grand events and the everyday experiences. We can find peace even in the troughs, knowing the crest will inevitably rise again.
Beautiful imagery.
It is. It's a beautiful reminder that challenges are inherent to life's journey, and it's often in those moments that we experience the most growth. Well, this deep dive into With Folded Wings has been quite a journey. We've explored practical techniques for personal growth, the power of the positive ingredient, and even contemplated the nature of death and healing.
It's incredible how much wisdom is packed into this book.
Yeah, it really is. And if these ideas resonated with you, I encourage you to delve deeper into its pages. With Folded Wings is filled with treasures waiting to be discovered. So keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep unlocking that wisdom within. See you on the next deep dive.
Take care.